Well, I've chosen that title because I think that we're at a very critical stage in terms of public discussion of climate policy in Canada. And I think that it's important for people to understand that we may be on a path in terms of emissions reduction policies that will inevitably lead to extremely adverse reaction on the part of the public. And the wall, in effect, is the stage at which the public becomes so concerned with the cost of the measures and with the questionable environmental benefits of them that they will demand a U-turn in policy. In some respects, that's a scientific issue, and I don't tend to get into the scientific aspects of it. What I do get involved in is an assessment of the prospects for international diplomacy to achieve significant emissions reductions worldwide, and the place of Canada in that effort, if you will. Since 1990, when the meetings of the United Nations bodies first began to discuss climate policy and the possibility of achieving large-scale emissions reductions, global gross greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 60%. So instead of declining, they've increased. And the reason that they've increased is because of the growth in the economies of the less developed countries. They all aspire to have higher standards of living, and that entails a higher energy use, and that in turn involves higher greenhouse gas emissions. In the path that we're on now, the less developed countries, which now represent almost 70% of world emissions, will continue to represent about 100% of the growth, and therefore there's relatively little, if anything, that countries like Canada can do which will halt emissions growth. If one accepted the thesis that human greenhouse gas emissions are causing catastrophic change, then the answer would probably be that we should spend far more of our attention on adaptation measures, because the measures that are now being taken globally to reduce emissions are simply inconsequential in terms of changing the course of events. There is, of course, the most basic point, which is that Canada represents only 1.5% of greenhouse gas emissions, and anything that we do would be so small as to have virtually no impact on either temperatures or climate. China, in a sense, is a greenhouse gas emitter phenomenon. They add a new coal-burning power plant almost every 3 days, and they represent 30% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, by far the largest of any country. In second place is the United States, and that's only 14% of global emissions. The emissions in China continue to grow dramatically. Coming up, on the outside is India, whose population has now exceeded that of China, and whose emissions growth is now almost 50% over the course of the past decade. And right behind India is Southeast Asia. So you have a whole series of developing countries, mostly in Asia, that are growing very rapidly, and they are driving the growth in global emissions.